Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9. Weather brought to you by Mitchell Roofing, here now and for over 20
Hey, good morning. It's great to have you along this morning. Very much appreciate it. We're just getting ready to get underway. The Democratic National Convention last night, the president didn't speak until 10:30. That's when he started. He spoke until almost 11:30 Central Time yesterday. Pretty incredible, really shoving him out of prime time. That's a big story, the Democrats and their convention generally. So it went on way longer than it should have. We'll talk about that in more detail coming up. Let's get underway here this morning. Thanks for being here.
On the air. I love the Greg Belfrage Show.
I've been listening to you for years, Greg. Thanks for all you do and keeping us informed.
You sound a little taller on radio. Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
This is the Greg Belfrage.
Good morning, my friend. The marketplace of ideas is open. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. It's great to have you along. So the Democrats with the first night of the Democrat National Convention, and I've got to tell you, I went to Breitbart this morning. And Breitbart, normally they've got a few, you come in the big story, they will have a few kind of sub-headlines, few sub-headlines, kind of in bold, attention-getting headlines. I printed these out. There's 2 pages of them, and it starts out, the coup continues. Cruel Dems bump Biden from prime time. Let's just start with that. Do you know he spoke last night at 10:30? That's what Central Time. And would mean 11:30 Eastern Time. He spoke until 12:20 Eastern Time. The guy's in his 80s. They dump him back in. What? Absolutely incredible. So they dumped him out of prime time. He didn't even speak. And so there's all of this. And I just am in shock at the legacy media reaction to this. They're talking about, well, this happened and this happened and this and all these things that happened. It's like, wait a minute. Nobody is commenting on the fact that they bumped him out of prime time. It's night 1 and you have your prime time speaker. Who's going to be the big speaker? Well, not Joe Biden. It's not going to be Joe Biden. Okay, so if you can't have the president on in prime time, what does that say about whether or not he actually should be the president of the United States, whether he's fit to be president? Who asks themselves these questions anymore? Is it you get caught up in all of this nonsense and all of this hype and this pageantry and all of this, and I just sit there and I'm like, again, for somebody who's rooted very much more in common sense, at least I hope to be, not always if you talk to people who know me, you try to have your feet on the ground and look at these events, and he not even a mention of it. It's like, well, and here's what was said. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a great night. She, was a crowd. Wow, really wowed the crowd and all of this. And it's like, I'm just sitting there going, and again, I mean, I understand it's a party atmosphere, but the president didn't even speak in prime time last night. He started his speech at 10:30 Central Time, finished it at 11:20 Central Time. Who was even up the the fact that he could make it that late? Boy, I will give him some credit. And me speaking at that hour, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Maybe be up, but not at the top of my game. Wow. So and again, I go these headlines at Breitbart on the DNC story. Party pushes POTUS past midnight. Yeah. He spoke until 12:20 last night, Eastern time. Then it says, old Yeller's last howl, Biden rages. Yeah, he was angry. And we have seen that again. Shameless saboteurs chant, "We love Joe," after knifing him. And and this just goes on. Really crazy. So let's get into what was said. Again, the lateness of the hour is just shocking to me, that you're going to have the President of the United States address the convention, and you push him back to 10:30 Central Time is when he starts. And he's in his 80s and absolutely incredible. So the takeaways from the first day of the DNC convention, you had Kamala Harris there. She made a surprise appearance. She appeared on stage then with President Biden. And she also at the start of this, I think she said, this is going to be a great week. And I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President, Joe Biden. Joe, thank you for this was, again, later than in the evening. Joe, thank you for all your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service, for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you. I thank you. And everybody's applauding and going nuts. And it's like, again, doesn't the hypocrisy of that bother you? There's a lot of hypocrisy here coming from Democrats who were literally forced him out. And then you get the president last night talking about democracy. Wait a minute. Democrats and democracy. Joe Biden was the guy who should have been on the stage. It should be his week, right? He's the guy who actually won Democrat votes. Kamala Harris never did. He's the person who actually was the Democrat, should be the nominee. Just incredible. So the president said, again, this is Axios. Get a load of this. America, I gave my best to you. Biden boomed. And then he said, I made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. And there were a number of chants. People were chanting, thank you, Joe. We love Joe. Coming down. Even Axios says this was a bitter pill for Biden to swallow. Not in what he said, though. What he said was the opposite of that. So there are reports, and he's denying them all. He's saying that, it's being reported that I didn't want to do this, and that's not true. So his speech was about 48 minutes, and he talked about Donald Trump, talked about democracy, talked about unions, the middle class, NATO, American exceptionalism. And then he rejected reports that he's still angry at the Democratic elites. And he said it's not true. And this is in the issue of prime time. This is a long time Biden aide who sent a text then to Axios and said, this is awful. He literally set up a campaign, handed it over to them. Do they have to cut him out of prime time? So you had Kamala Harris making a surprise cameo, you had Hillary Clinton speaking. Axios says the show stealers, fresh off an Olympic gold medal, Team USA basketball coach Steve Kerr returned to the site to campaign for Harris. Also, you had the president of the United Auto Workers, Sean Fain, who was there and removed his jacket to show off a shirt that said, Trump is a scab, vote Harris. I mentioned Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So she gave she went after a speech attacking Donald Trump as a two-bit union buster. So those were among some of the highlights, and that continues. I want to get to more of some of the president's comments. Are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? He asked the crowd. And he said, it's been an honor of a lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more, he said. We need to preserve our democracy. Again, am I the only one who says we need to preserve democracy when the Democrat Party has forced Joe out and he's the guy who would receive the votes? I mean, this is just a little bit too much, I think, for certainly the folks at Breitbart News to swallow. Those headlines this morning are just brutal, absolutely brutal. All right, so let's look at the Hill. And the Hill notes, and I would agree, this was must have been an emotionally tough moment for the president. And certainly based on the clips that we're hearing and what I've seen, again, he took the stage last night at 10:30 Central. Spoke until 11:20 Central, so almost 50 minutes. He spoke about the job. He said, I love the job. I love my country more. Hillary Clinton also took the stage last night, suggested that Kamala Harris will finally shatter the glass ceiling. She said, my friends, the future is here, speaking of Kamala. And then Clinton contended that she could see freedom through the cracks in the metaphorical glass ceiling. She said, on the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris taking the oath of office as our 47th president of the United States. So the president also, when he started his, started his remarks, he talked about the protesters out on the street. There were 4, I think, that were arrested, and not as disruptive as they may have been, or I expected them to be. And the president said, those protesters out on the street, they have a point, he said. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides. We're working around the clock to end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people and finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. He said, we're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostage to their families and surge humanitarian health and food assistance into Gaza to end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people, he said, and finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. So he also mangled up quite a few of his words last night during the speech. He, New York Post has got reporting on that. And the president was introduced by his daughter, Ashley. Again, a lot of this is just the president being pushed until that speech starting at 10:30 Central, being pushed way out of prime time. What message does that send to you? I mean, what do you think the reaction is from Joe Biden? Absolutely incredible. So the post-millennials also got a piece on this. President spread multiple hoaxes about Trump, which he is, and I think he does that deliberately. They know that they'll just keep pushing that line despite of the fact what Donald Trump actually said versus what Joe Biden said. And that's been debunked by a number of people, repeatedly debunked, and you got Joe Biden still out there saying it. Also, things got off to a rough start with protesters tearing down a security fence. So you had thousands of people marching outside the Democratic National Convention. And the superintendent of Chicago police said some of the protesters who had taken down a fence threw water bottles and other items at police. And he said, when you have people infiltrate a crowd and they want to commit acts of violence, vandalism, we're going to stop them, he said. We're not going to tolerate anyone who is going to vandalize things in our city. So the crowd was chanting, "End the occupation." It's the same thing we've seen over and over again. End the occupation now. The whole world is watching. There's a very interesting story at the New York Post this morning regarding Donald Trump and independents. That Donald Trump is doing very well with independent voters. And that he is, with independent voters, leading Kamala Harris. Now, again, this is new Keystone State polling, suggesting that unaligned voters could be the key to victory for Trump. And so I'll get into it in more details later this morning, that his margin is, with these independents above Kamala Harris, is pretty significant, about a 10-point lead that he's got over Kamala Harris. Now that's just with independents, which is pretty huge. Also, it looks like there will not be, and I don't think this will come as any surprise to you, that Kamala Harris has not agreed to a Fox News debate. So now Donald Trump is opting for a town hall instead of a debate. And Trump said on True Social yesterday, he said, rather than the debate on September 4th, I've agreed to do a town hall anchored by Sean Hannity for Fox. Will take place in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Details to follow. Trump said on True Social. So Trump also said he was not surprised that Harris would not agree to a debate on Fox. He said it was very difficult at best for her to defend her record because she's flip-flopping on absolutely everything she once believed in. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see the debate on ABC and how they're going to handle this. Now, as we talk about the Democratic National Convention, this story, the media, the legacy media is fuming because of seeding that's been given to social media influencers and over the traditional media. The media is used to getting all the space that they need. Generally, you get the parties that are make sure the media is well taken care of. So if they're covering the conventions, they've got plenty of space, workspace, so on. Well, they gave some of this prime seating to the social media influencers instead of the media. And they're fuming. This is a piece at the Washington Examiner. There are some folks that are fuming about this. And I wonder if that is, we'll talk about that in more detail. Social media influencers. I'm not to be critical of those who are on social media, but social media influencers versus the actual media. Can anybody tell any difference anymore between the two? I think it's worth a conversation because they're ranting a bit about that this morning. And then Harley Davidson is, according to Fox News, they released a statement yesterday renouncing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yet another big company that is backing away from woke policies and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we'll take a look also at that story in more detail. Let's look at the big stories this morning here on the Greg Belfrage Show. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. I really appreciate it. 627, cloudy skies, 66. This hour of our show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
Weeknights 5 to 8. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9.
That pushing the president back to 10:30 last night. You know, NBC joked about that years ago with Saturday Night Live, the not ready for primetime players. You know, apparently there was a feeling that Joe Biden, not ready for prime time, but he can run the country. What message does that send to you? We'll talk about that this morning.
In today's fast-paced world, building strong business relationships is key. It's about forging connections built on trust, innovation, and passion for excellence. At Lawrence & Schiller, we're about pushing boundaries, problem-solving, outthinking and outdoing the competition, and driving positive business outcomes. If you're tired of settling for subpar results, get to know us at l-s.com, where every problem has a solution and every result is extraordinary.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky and you may
just checking to see. I've got a computer that's over here to my left. Just checking to see if the temperature had been updated from what I've got.
Big Blue will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term providers help thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Blue at 800-345-2789. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-345-2789. Big Blue will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-345-2789.
6:30, cloudy and 66 currently at Kello. Joe Bowman is in the Kello.com News Center. Coming up, South Dakota, 40 other states, and the Justice Department have filed a civil antitrust lawsuit against Ticketmaster. Also, the U.S. 8th Circuit Court has reversed the federal ban on pistol braces. And we'll get a response from Marty Jackley coming up.
During his opening night speech at the Democratic National Convention.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
And he rallied the crowd for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Isn't he repeating a lot of the same lines when he's...
Thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Former President Trump.
Listen to that crowd.
If Kamala gets in, the United States will rapidly become a deindustrialized third world nation.
He'll speak in Michigan today, North Carolina tomorrow, then Arizona and Nevada. America's listening to Fox News.
Kello News Time, 6:31. I'm Joe Bowman in the Kello.com News Center. The Department of Justice, South Dakota, and 40 other states have filed a civil antitrust lawsuit against Ticketmaster. The suit alleges that Live Nation Ticketmaster has been cornering the market by threatening and retaliating against venues that work with competitors. State Attorney General Marty Jackley says this anti-competitive conduct unfairly increases ticket prices for all South Dakotans. The U.S. 8th Circuit Court has reversed the federal ban on pistol braces. A coalition of 24 states, including South Dakota, filed a lawsuit last year against the outlawing of pistol stabilizing braces by the ATF. Attorney General Marty Jackley says it's another victory against federal bureaucracy working to take away individual rights. A house party in Sioux Falls got way out of hand when multiple fights broke out and one person reportedly attempted to hit others with their vehicle. The incident happened in the area of South Shirley Place near 41st Sunday morning. Authorities say attendees had left the house party and moved to a nearby parking lot where the fighting continued. Someone of the group then reportedly got in their vehicle and tried to run other people over. Police found and arrested the driver for aggravated assault. No injuries were reported. The American Red Cross reports blood supplies across the country are reaching dangerous levels. Patty Brooks, the director of the Red Cross for East South Dakota, explains the situation.
Yeah, we've hit the level of an emergency. Our numbers drop off during the summer just because of schedules and summer travel. We've hit an emergency shortage this summer.
The recent heat waves across the country, coupled with Hurricane Debbie, has caused the cancellation of hundreds of blood drives. Brooks says the Red Cross does not compete with other blood collecting groups. She encourages everyone to donate blood if they can. And in Canaries baseball, the Birds are off today. The Canaries are right behind Winnipeg for the top spot in the West Division. They take on the Lincoln Salt Dogs in a doubleheader tomorrow at the Birdcage. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman.
The news never stops. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9.
Scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible today. Our high temperature is 73, southeasterly wind at 10 to 15. Still a chance of scattered showers this evening, low temperatures in the low 60s. Tomorrow becoming partly cloudy, warming up in the afternoon, a high temperature close to 80. That's your weather update from the Storm Center at Kettleland TV. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens.
Where the most important viewpoint is yours. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9.
If you think that AI is not going to one day just spin out of control, listen up. Our Game Commando for T-Mobile, their advanced network now goes farther than ever before. Visit T-Mobile.com/55 today. Last week, an AI company in Tokyo.
Some of these stories are really intriguing. I'll touch on them in more detail coming up here. These are stories that are trending. Senator John Fetterman skipping the DNC, then for family reasons. And you've got Fetterman's communications director, who is out there. Again, he's a communications director for a U.S. senator.
The AI its own program to extend
when you're a communications director for a U.S. senator, you are there to carry the senator's message. And this communications director is out there. So, keep in mind, never been elected to anything. Never been elected to anything. He's out there criticizing Fetterman for his stance on Israel and some other things, and being very outspoken about it. You're a nobody. I mean, seriously. And not to be critical of people in that job, but, you know, Fetterman is the U.S. Senator. Fetterman is the guy who actually won an election. You know, you're a communications director to be out there and saying, oh, I disagree with Senator Fetterman on this. If I were John Fetterman, I'd be looking for a new communications director. I mean, seriously. Wow. That person would be, you're done right now.
The Kim Commando Show, live Saturday mornings at 9. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
The Kello Hotline is brought to you by Tires, your Give You More tire and automotive store. Financing programs available to Sioux Falls locations to serve you.
From inflation to worker shortages, America's small businesses are met with challenge after challenge. Now, a massive
because, as I mentioned, Fetterman's communications director, Town Hall's actually got a piece on this morning. That's not the story that's trending, but it is. Yeah, because Free Spoke says his own communications director publicly criticizes him for his pro-Israel views. A lot of people are pretty shocked by that. Yeah, and John Fetterman is the one who holds the office, not the communications director.
We're not just building roofs, we're building a legacy of betterment for generations to come. Here's to the future where we continue to get better together. Mitchell Roofing and Siding, call us today, 996-8648.
Hey, a word from my friends at Washington Crossing. You know, imagine living in a place where you can truly enjoy every day. And Washington Crossing offers just that. From spacious apartments to engaging social events and great dining, everything is designed with you in mind. Whether you're looking to stay active with fitness classes or relax in a quiet corner with a good book, Washington Crossing has something for everyone. Plus, with 24/7 staff availability, you can live confidently, knowing that help is always nearby. Experience the difference that Washington Crossing can make. Call them today, 605-271-9273, and book a personal tour. You're going to love what you find at Washington Crossing. That's 605-271-9273. Washington Crossing, life made simple.
With all the nonsense that poses as news, we all need someone to tell us what's really going on. That's where Kello comes in. We bring you clear, concise talk from here in South Dakota and across the country. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9. Entertaining talk and news when it happens.
6:39, cloudy skies, 66. Good morning and welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show this hour. Brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
What's trending now?
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. The hashtag does that. News and views from Belf's News Gallery.
Well, the president addressing the crowd at the Democratic National Convention last night, and it was late. It was, he spoke, again, he started his speech last night at 10:30 Central Time, Went till about almost 11:20 Central Time. So it was a late night farewell as the president urged his support. He said, let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? And let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as president and vice president? And then he talked during the speech last night. The president said, more Americans have health insurance today than ever before. And after fighting for 50 years to give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices, we finally beat Big Pharma. Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote. We're among the presidents. Again, he spoke for about 48 minutes last night. Also, Hillary Clinton spoke to the crowd, praising Kamala Harris during the first night of the convention. Very critical of Donald Trump, saying Donald only cares about himself, she said. And she said, Kamala has the character, experience, and vision to lead us forward. Kamala cares about kids, families, and America. Donald only cares about himself, she said. Also, anti-Israel protesters breached the security barrier outside of the United Center then during the start of the DNC. So at least 5 people were detained by Chicago police after sections of security fencing were removed along the perimeter as the DNC convention then kicking off officially yesterday. And officials said, our job is to make sure we keep the DNC safe, keep our city safe, keep our people safe. We have no idea what they would have done if they had gotten onto the other side. I think this police chief who's speaking said, we're not going to tolerate anyone who is going to vandalize things in our city. We're not going to tolerate anyone who is going to commit acts of violence. It's also a story trending about Kamala Harris proposing to raise the corporate tax rate to 28%, her campaign says. So she would raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28% if she wins the election, which would be rolling back a law that Donald Trump had put in place. As we talk about the Democratic National Convention, there were 2 protesters that were arrested. There were thousands demonstrating outside of the DNC, and Illinois Governor Pritzker says the National Guard is on standby if they are needed. So the Democratic National Convention, I think this was actually maybe even a little bit prior to the convention getting underway yesterday, because there were a number of protests that were starting and taking place over the weekend. Senator John Fetterman saying he has no regrets for skipping this week's Democratic National Convention, and I'm looking at a story from the Free Press, and to hear it from him, it has literally nothing to do with him scotch taping photos of the Israeli hostages to his Senate office walls or attacking fellow. Now again, this is from the Free Press. and you see how they write. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Bringing up these absolutely, to listen to him has nothing to do with all these other events. And of course, we got to bring them up right in the, in the lead paragraph of the story. It's absolutely incredible. The media is such a joke. So also, he was skipping the DNC for family reasons. That's what John Fetterman has said. Now, beyond this, Fetterman's own communications director is publicly criticizing him for his pro-Israel views. And there are stories regarding this from Fox News and Yahoo News. I happened to see a piece at over at townhall.com saying that, Fetterman skipping the Democratic National Convention, and with the pro-Hamas agitators that are there, it's, if that is the reason, I don't know that it is, but if that's a reason, it would make sense. But his communications director is out there publicly taking issue with Fetterman. And getting a reaction to him. And people are saying that you don't do that. Some who are saying to have a staffer who is out there publicly in disagreement with Fetterman, a member of his staff. One person said, as someone who's worked in politics for almost 2 decades, I'm genuinely dumbfounded at this statement. He said, it's never the job of a staffer to not only contradict their boss, but then insult them to the press. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Other stories that are trending this morning. The DNC then also adopted a party platform that was not rewritten. So they adopted their party platform mentioning Joe Biden's second term. He's not, as you know, he's not obviously not going to have a second term. He's not running for re-election, but they didn't bother to change any of that in their Democratic Party platform. Those stories have been trending here this morning. I've seen those over the course of the last few days. Donald Trump says that he would offer Elon Musk a cabinet position if Trump winds up winning the election. So he says he would offer Musk a slot in the cabinet, also saying that if Musk would do it, he would definitely tap him for it. Also suggested he might end the tax credit for the EV tax credit. So for those with electric vehicles. Also, George Santos pleading guilty yesterday to federal fraud charges. So he was in court, pled guilty then in fraud case, and he was pretty forthright about it, taking the blame on himself, not trying to put it on anybody else. So Santos, you'll remember, is the former Republican congressman from New York, who apparently he had trouble with the truth. So he pled guilty to a slew of campaign fraud charges, and he says, it is on him. Intelligence officials say they know who's responsible for the hacking of Donald Trump's computers, as well as the Biden-Harris campaign, Who's responsible for hacking into those computers? I don't think you'll be surprised to learn Iran. So U.S. intelligence officials say it was Iran who was behind these campaign hacks. Also, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, had a meeting with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in which Netanyahu says it was a positive meeting that they had. Blinken saying it's a decisive moment for a Gaza ceasefire deal. So Netanyahu has agreed to a U.S. bridging ceasefire proposal. He's agreed to it. Whether or not the issue has not been getting Israel to agree to some of these things. The issue has been getting Hamas to agree to it. Hamas has said, they wanted no part of any of this. And ongoing continued talks. It's the United States that's desperate for this ceasefire. And Hamas is it's just unequivocally said, no, we're not going to do it. Also, Phil Donahue has died at the age of 88. This was a big story yesterday, and I saw this just as I was getting off the air yesterday morning. Phil Donahue, his family released it and confirmed his death. He actually died on Sunday night, and then it was released by his family yesterday morning. So Phil Donahue dying at home, surrounded by his wife of 44 years, Marlo Thomas, his sister, his children, grandchildren, and his beloved golden retriever, Charlie, said the Donahue family. So a lot of tributes that are being paid to Phil Donahue. Again, he was 88 years old. Hunter Biden's back at it again, trying to get his tax evasion case dismissed, and a judge is having none of it. So a federal judge has rejected now the latest attempt to dismiss Hunter Biden's California tax charges. Biden is expected to stand trial on September 5th for failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes. He was already convicted on 3 federal gun charges in Delaware in June. Also, a Wisconsin woman who argued that she had legally killed a man who sex trafficked her received 11 years in prison. So this is a Milwaukee woman who said she was legally allowed to kill. This is what she claimed. She was legally allowed to kill this man because he was sexually trafficking her. The jury didn't buy it, sentenced her yesterday to 11 years in prison after she had pled guilty to a reduced count of reckless homicide. And the judge sentenced her to 11 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Also trending this morning, the U.S. and South Korea have kicked off a joint military exercise. And there's a lot of belly aching coming from North Korea, but the U.S. and South Korea beginning joint military drills, and the U.S. has not confirmed the number of American troops that are participating. The U.S. In recent months has increased its regional deployment of long-range bombers, submarines, and aircraft carrier strike groups in order to train with the South Koreans as well as with Japanese forces. Also, the House Oversight Committee has released their impeachment report on President Biden. They're accusing him of abuse of power and obstruction. Talked about that yesterday morning. One of the big stories yesterday morning. It's trending this morning. So House Republicans then accused President Biden of egregious corruption. And they say that he, his family, and associates made $27 million from foreign business. And there are a number of stories that you can find regarding that. And then Elon Musk has closed X offices in Brazil and is suspending operations in Brazil. Elon Musk is in the midst of a censorship fight with Brazil. So X is suspending business in Brazil, at least for now. And then a volcano erupted shortly after an earthquake in eastern Russia. It was a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, which shortly thereafter followed by a volcano eruption. And those are the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Great to have you along this morning, 6:57. Cloudy skies, 66 this hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. Brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
Controversy and conversation go hand in hand.
Boy, my computer is slow this morning. Excuse me. Hey, thank you so much for letting me join you. Very much appreciate it. I hope you'll join me for the fourth hour coming up at 9:30 this morning. It's a more relaxed setting. You know, it's down in my office and take a little bit more time getting into things that I generally do not get into on the air. So I hope you'll join me for the fourth hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. Otherwise, I'll see you again next time. Take care.